problem. Hold on a second. Testing, testing. Oh, there we go. 1, 2, 3. Something else here. That's better. Hello, it is 12. We are recording live now. 1:25 p.m. early afternoon on Friday, February 20th, 2026. My name is Mark Kulak, KULACZ. This is a show, Houstonic.live. I'll go full screen for just a minute here. This is a archival and analysis channel brought to you by someone who got into the business here from the world of big tech, where I was an engineer, an analyst, product marketing, did some sales and tech training. And it was the underreporting of the drug epidemic in the United States of America, which got myself, with the support of my family, into getting online, doing a little bit of tweeting here or there. I wasn't political. I wasn't active. I wasn't conspiratorial or any of this stuff before then. And for the most part, I don't like those words. even to this day. As of this year, 2026, the big story of the year remains Jeffrey Epstein. It's apparently going to dominate the year, even though, and I'm sorry about the crazy lights in the background, you're just going to have to, I'll try to turn them off here. I don't know if this remote will work or not. Will it work? There you go. I don't think we need them. Even though this year 2026, the 25th anniversary of September 11th, 2001, everything right now is about Jeffrey Epstein. And that puts me into a tough position because I don't really want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein and add any fuel to the fire of what I see as a lot of not true information about him, excessively salacious, excessively just nasty and dirty and misleading, confusing, but it is the talk of the day, and usually there has to be something about it, whether it's the half-truths or how it's being used as a tool to distract and to deceive. And I think there's a little bit of both going on here. Specifically in today's show, what we're going to assess, we're going to go over one very strong piece of evidence, and we're going to analyze it. And I think Jeffrey Epstein requires no introduction on this show. This American, broker, financier, who wound up, there's all kinds of stories and books about him. I mean, you know the rest. But in particular, the timeline of his life, starting around the year 1981, going up to around 1987. Those are the years that I find right now, they interest me the most at the moment because they are the ones with the least amount of concrete evidence about them, which in this case is leading some to suggest that this guy who worked as a part-time interim teacher at a private school in New York City, going around with the math club and then working for 4 years at Bear Stearns as a not necessarily a very highly paid associate there, wound up getting kicked out of Bear Stearns in 1981. Again, that was a major brokerage investing firm in New York City, for something which it isn't even clear what he did, to suggestions that he's been one of the most notorious and successful arms traffickers, drug traffickers working at the highest levels of global government, global intelligence, influencing energy, nuclear, geopolitics, nation states, and the actual direction of all of human civilization, because he knows how to compromise people with photos or something like that. And sometimes you just say it, and that's all you need to know. That it just doesn't sound right here. I'm just going to do this once live on the air. A phrase that Jonathan Cooey of Giga Ohm Biological, myself, have been repeating is a phrase of if X, then Y. If X, then Y. So if one thing is true, then another thing must be true, right? It's if you're outside and it's raining and you don't have a raincoat on and umbrella, you're probably going to get wet, right? If X, then Y. If it's cold and it's raining outside, are you just going to stand there forever and get wet and die of getting too cold, or are you going to do something about it? So if X, then Y. I mean, those are maybe excessively simple examples here. In the Jeffrey Epstein case, if X, then Y. So going back to that statement we just made here, and then combining that with another phrase that I know I've said before was evidence. Evidence is no substitute for thinking. And this kind of plays in with this if X, then Y. Okay. So we are led to believe right now that we are being suggested that this financier, Jeffrey Epstein, has been involved in arms trafficking, weapons trafficking, drug trafficking, human trafficking, working with the biggest weapons companies in the world and highest levels of global government, intelligence, CIA, with Saudi Arabia, Israel, NATO, United Nations, world government, global government, Mars, future off planets. He controls everything. But he had no background to make himself able to do any of this. He wasn't in the military. I don't even think he ever even owned a gun. Somehow he went from having a very small, like $20,000 violation at Bear Stearns in 1981 or something like that, to being trusted to trade weapons at the highest level of global government. And there's no evidence for it other than some people said something to reporters who were motivated to write such a story. There's just no evidence of it. If there was anyone to be used for such a role, the reality is that he doesn't fit any of the criteria. He just doesn't. He didn't know enough people. That wasn't his interest. That wasn't his background. So if there's no... So this evidence is not a substitute for thinking, okay? Is in this case here, what happens is when there are situations where there is, someone of interest, and there's several years where it's kind of hard to know exactly what they were doing. All right, it's just not well documented. One way that you can make suggestions about what that person was doing, if you want to take advantage of it, is you throw a lot of loosely correlated evidence related to other people, other things, suggestions, and you just keep building bad evidence upon bad evidence, loose correlations built upon loose correlations. And there's this suggestion that if you just throw enough evidence out there, and again, evidence is not proof. Evidence is just evidence, you know? Did I go to the store today to get something notarized? Well, there's a screwdriver next to me. Is this screwdriver related to me going to the UPS store to get a document notarized? Not really. I don't think so. This is evidence, though, right? So evidence could be anything. So people will just throw a lot of evidence out there, and eventually the hope is that there'll just be so much evidence that will just crush people and give them no opportunity but to accept whatever it is that they want people to accept. And there's no better evidence of this phenomenon than Whitney Webb's two books, One Nation Under Blackmail, Volume 1, Volume 2. These books are evidence of how this is done. There's almost nothing concrete in these books about Jeffrey Epstein between 1981 to 1986 or 7. You can find a few things online. He was sued a couple of times by an investor down in Texas who gave him some money, and then Jeffrey Epstein reinvested it and didn't get the money back. And you kind of get the impression that he's just kind of, he's trying to just get money wherever he can. And and what I'm starting to see is just a lot of, I don't want to say petty theft level, but, he's just kind of, a BS artist, really. He's scamming some people out of money. I wouldn't even be surprised, and I don't have evidence of this, I wouldn't be surprised if Jeffrey Epstein has a drug problem at this level. This is the type of behavior that you would see someone that is in debt, and based upon the behavior that I've seen him exhibit, physical behavior, I wouldn't be surprised if he had a coke habit or something like that. But the evidence of what exactly he did in those years is very light. And the things that you can find that are absolutely clearly documented somewhere, they just don't suggest anything of that magnitude. They just don't. So if X, then Y, and you can take that in both directions. If there's just no background of him. And another way that you can you can use books to see how backgrounds are created is that in the One Nation Under Blackmail Volume 1, I did a couple of tallies here. Let's see if I can open up the document. Was this the one here? No. Okay. So in Volume 1, and I'm going to review these names in a moment. Okay. In the Volume 1, there is 0 references to a man named Michael, I think it's Michael Hoffenberg, Hoffenberg. And I'm going to review who this guy is in a moment. In Volume 1, there are 30 references to Les Wexner. And in Volume 1, there are only 112 references to Jeffrey Epstein, even though the nation is dominated by blackmail. The whole world is run by blackmail. The books are based upon a false premise that you can blackmail anyone and that you control the world through blackmail, which is just not true. You can't do it. It's a false premise. I could not be blackmailed. If someone tried to blackmail me and released a compromising photo, you know what would happen? While it may be a little painful, I would win in the big picture because all of my work would then become famous. So in one ways, someone would never blackmail me because my fame would be exactly what they don't want. So why should I should actually be begging to be blackmailed. Please do it and then release it so I'm famous. I'm not kidding. I've considered paying to have fake photos of me made standing next to Jeffrey Epstein just so I would become famous enough for my other things to be seen. So while everyone is saying, oh, no, this is bad if someone's in the Epstein files, that's not true. I'm the only voice out there right now that's regularly saying we had 1 million deaths in the opioid epidemic in the United States of America. The sole reason of life expectancy drops, which has, by the way, been corroborated by New York Times. No one will repeat it. And the last thing they want is anything blackmailable out there that would make me famous. So the underlying premise is invalidated just with me. And I'm just one person. We still have another 8 billion people on the planet to consider. Most people can't be blackmailed, so the underlying premise of the books is absolutely 100% false. It's 100% false. People can't be blackmailed. Generally speaking, they can't do it. It's a false premise. It's a false premise. I'm going to say it a few more times. The entire premise of Jeffrey Epstein and controlling the world by blackmail is a 100% false premise. Everything built upon it is shaky. Everything. I don't know how to say it enough. I don't know how to say it any more clear than that. So let's review right now because the book 1 only has 112 references to Epstein. The idea of using Epstein, turning up the volume on what Epstein is, especially in Volume 2, went from 112 references to several thousand references in Volume 2. Also, curiously, Volume 1 has 30 references to Les Wexner. We are being told that Les Wexner, this clothing guy who owned a couple of stores you could buy spatulas and underwear in, somehow, richest guy in Ohio, which is he isn't even, the richest guy in Iowa is richer than the richest guy in Ohio. I'm sorry, but the richest guy in Ohio is nothing to write home about. You're doing pretty good, but there's like 100 people in California richer than the richest person in Ohio. So there are 487 references to Les Wexner in Volume 2. Why? I thought Les Wexner and Victoria's Secrets was the way to control the entire world, the universe, the planets, the stars, all the governments. What the hell happened between Volume 1 and Volume 2? This Hoffenberg dude went from no references in Volume 1 to 86 references in Volume 2. Why? He wasn't at all he wasn't valuable in Volume 1. Well, because when you dig into the details, what you're going to learn is that this Michael Hoffenberg, he was a New York man who was involved in the one of the tower Ponzi schemes, not the World Trade Center towers, not the Twin Towers, but another Ponzi scheme in New York City, okay? He wound up hiring, again, this is all secondhand stuff. There's no evidence of it. There's nothing other than so-and-so said so-and-so based upon so-and-so. That's it. That's all you have. And I'm going to show some evidence, which admittedly is also secondhand, although when you think about it, okay, the evidence I'm going to show, although it is secondhand, makes logical sense. If you know that Jeffrey Epstein lives in New York City, if you know he's a little bit of a playboy, I guess. I don't know. I think he's mildly autistic or has some Asperger's, might have a bit of a drug problem, and he knows people in the fashion industry in New York City. When you know that, how can you then leap to the premise that he's running around selling guns and drugs at the international level and involved in the Iran-Contra affair? How can you make that leap with no evidence whatsoever? That is an irresponsible leap to make. Were there guns? Do guns exist? Yes. Does Anand Khashoggi exist? Yes. Does Iran exist? Yes, it does. Does BCCI list, the Bank of International? It does. And don't forget the fact that it was founded by a Pakistani man. Just letting you know. Do all of these things exist, but that doesn't mean Epstein's involved in them any more than I am, or my old dog Guster the Briard. It doesn't make it. These leaps are ridiculous and irresponsible. And Rockefeller, I don't think is mentioned once in Volume 1, and it's only mentioned 25 times in Volume 2. So it's a very weird progression. And this incredible focus on this one old, spatula store lingerie, catalog guy, Les Wexner in Ohio, who's a generous philanthropist to Ohio State University, is alarming. It is alarming how focused they are to ignore the drug epidemic in the United States of America and focus all this on a spatula store guy. Of course, I'm making a joke to Bed Bath & Beyond, but that's why I went there. I bought stuff from Les Wexner because every once in a while I needed a new toaster oven, or some towels for the linen closet. That's it. That's it. This is a joke. So, most of this, what I'm referring to today, let me see here. Do I have that? And we will go back to the Whitney Webb. Can't believe I used that pointer there. Totally the wrong pointer. The Whitney Webb books, if they are necessary. I'm going to do a couple of highs first. There's a longer article that I ran into yesterday. Let's see if I can find that puppy. I know it's around here somewhere. Was this it? I'll keep that one on the screen. I think that one could be helpful. Let's see here. I know I saved a link to it. It's from 2023, and it's on a blog site of a journalist who, unfortunately for him, I guess in this case, has the last name of Epstein. No relation to Jeffrey Epstein, though. Let's see here. It's on The Spectator. Now, The Spectator is something I have to give you a warning. Have a little bit of caution using it because was it Melissa Chen? I think it was Melissa Chen, who is another one of these futurist thinkers with Brett Weinstein, if I have the name right. She worked for The Spectator for a little while. So this is a tricky site to use, but that doesn't mean that everything on it is wrong. Again, you have to factor in. But there's some things about the way that this article is written that I find very compelling because it makes sense when you apply the if X, then Y idea. The article came out on May 9th, 2023, and it's titled My Many Run-Ins with Jeffrey Epstein, and it's written by an Edward J. Epstein. I think I'll... Oh, wait. Do I have to read it? You know why? I'll have to read it over here because I did have a subscription to them, which I've recently canceled. I canceled it because I wasn't finding enough value. How about that? Am I going to be able to read it over here? We're going to try. I'm going to try to read it over here. Sorry about that. I was actually surprised yesterday I was able to read it. I I recently had to go through a culling of my subscriptions for, cost control purposes. That always then results in me subscribing to more things, even though the whole point should have been cost control. But here's the article here, and I wish it wasn't on that monitor because it's a little bit too far away from me. I'll try to zoom in a little bit here. And it's on The Spectator, and it came out on May 9th, 2023. Edward J. Epstein, My Many Run-Ins with Jeffrey Epstein. Let me just get it started, and I'm going to say hi. In Joel and Ethan Coen's 1991 movie called Barton Fink, a writer in pursuit of the big story accidentally winds up befriending a serial murderer who lives next door. The dark comedy's ironic juxtaposition did not escape me in August of 2019 when Jeffrey Epstein was found hanged in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City, and the mushrooming scandal involving him threatened to engulf 3 of the wealthiest men in America, 2 former presidents of the United States, and the second son of the Queen of England. I think that was Harry or Andrew. For me, his sad saga began unfolding some 35 years earlier. So 2019 minus 35, what are we up to? That is 1984. 33 years earlier, when I was still investigating a world-class financial mystery in Europe and began with the hanging of the Italian banker Roberto Calvi, also known as God's Banker, under Blackfriars Bridge in London on June 18, 1982. It involved an even more sinister financial scandal that threatened to bring down the Vatican Bank and cause what Pope John Paul warned would be, quote, a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions in which the church will suffer the gravest damage, unquote. Archbishop Paul Marcinus, the Vatican Bank's head and a principal player in the scandal, had guided me through some of the inner sanctums of the Vatican, but even with his help, the missing $1.5 billion in funds, it's like nothing. The U.S. government is going like $10 billion in debt a minute or something like that. Don't quote me on that precisely, but $1.5 billion, it's $1.5 million in funds remained a mystery. I was still trying to unravel the financial threads of the missing money when I encountered Jeffrey Epstein on October 31st, 1987. So this is not a young author. So on October 31st, 1987 is when they first encountered Jeffrey Epstein. That is right after he was hired by this name that I just mentioned a moment ago. Let's see, is it still on the screen? Hoffenberg, Michael Hoffenberg. I had gone that evening, again, this is 1987, this is the writer of this article in The Spectator. I had gone that evening with the British businessman Jimmy Goldsmith and his 35-year-old daughter Isabel to a Halloween party at the Upper East Side home in Manhattan of Coco Brown, a movie producer who rarely, if ever, made a movie. Soon after our arrival, a young man in his mid-30s with a big toothy smile sauntered up to us, hugged Isabel, and introduced himself as Jeffrey Epstein. He was with his brother, Mark Epstein. A surfeit of Epsteins, remarked Isabel, who knew Jeffrey from London. Of course, Isabel, she knows that this person here is also Epstein, the blog or the journalist. The next day, Jeffrey Epstein called me and said there was something he'd like to talk to me about. We went for tea at the Mayfair Hotel on the 65th Street the following Thursday. He told me at the outset he had information that I might be interested in for my Wall Street Babylon column in Manhattan Inc. He said he had learned it in the course of his business dealings. I asked him, the journalist here, well, what is your business? And Jeffrey Epstein said, quote, I'm sort of a financial bounty hunter, he said, with an I know more than you grin. He said it with an I know more than you grin that rarely left his face throughout our tea. He explained that he hunted down hidden money for a fee. He described the convoluted network of concealed funds in Andorra, Fiji, Gibraltar, and the Cayman Islands in such vivid detail that it sounded like he might be in the business of hiding as well as finding it. He dropped many legendary names in the realm of money machinations. Adnan Khashoggi, Aristotle Onassis, and Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, but his tales, though intriguing, didn't quite add up. If X, then Y. For one thing, I knew this is why I was blown away by this. I love this article. I knew. So the author says, I knew Khashoggi well enough through Jimmy Goldsmith to doubt that he needed the help from Epstein in either hiding or finding hiding places for money. Brilliant. So I asked Jeffrey Epstein about the only hidden money of interest to me, which is the $1.5 billion from the Vatican Bank that vanished into shell companies in Panama. Epstein knew nothing about those funds. As we finished the tea, I mentioned I was leaving for Spain on Monday. Jeffrey Epstein asked, how do you go? And I responded, Iberia Airlines. Jeffrey Epstein said, if you like, I can upgrade you to first class, much better food. I asked how. Jeffrey Epstein said, drop your ticket off with my doorman tomorrow morning. It won't cost you a penny. Jeffrey lived in a one-bedroom apartment. What? Really? So this is 1987. We're supposed to believe that the top arms and drug trafficker for Adnan Khashoggi, who's the key person making Iran-Contra, lives in a one-bedroom apartment and is willing to upgrade this guy's airplane ticket to first class. I'm sorry, this doesn't add up. If X, then Y. This is not the central person in Iran-Contra, and whoever is saying that, you are misleading people. You're selling a false bag of goods, false hope, false conspiracy. And it's too bad that instead of trying to help people by talking about the drug epidemic, you continue to tell jokes and make funny thumbnail pictures. It's too bad that you care so little about people that you can't get into this stuff. But anyways, let us continue. Jeffrey Epstein lived in a one-bedroom apartment at Solo Tower at 265 East 66th Street. As I instructed, I brought my ticket to the doorman on Friday morning, and Friday evening I picked it up with a first-class sticker and a first-class seat assignment. I flew to Malaga, Spain, and back in great style and comfort. When I mentioned Epstein's ticket trick to Jimmy Goldsmith, he warned me that, again, this is this intermediary between him and also Adnan Khashoggi. He warned me to be careful with him. It was good advice I did not immediately heed. In December of 1988, I needed to go to Los Angeles to interview associates and possibly victims of the so-called junk bond king Mike Milken, now involved in a growing scandal. When I told Jeffrey Epstein about it, he not only converted my coach tickets to first class, but he insisted that I stay at his house in Santa Monica. Now he's got a house in Santa Monica. He rents it. He had rented the two-bedroom house near the pier for his girlfriend, Eva Anderson, a former Miss Sweden in her third year of medical school at UCLA. Since I needed to be in Los Angeles for weeks for my interviews, I happily stayed at Eva's house. She couldn't have been a better host. Jeffrey Epstein had another surprise for me in Los Angeles. It came in the form of a call from the actress Morgan Fairchild. If you're hanging out with Morgan Fairchild, you're not trafficking guns. You're not in the middle of the Iran-Contra affair. Somehow you're connected with Hollywood. But this is where, but I'm almost there. This is where it just gets better. Epstein had another surprise for me. It came in the form of the actress Morgan Fairchild. At his behest, she met me for lunch at the Polo Lounge at the Beverly Hills Hotel. She was preparing for her role in the upcoming Murphy Brown TV series, and Jeffrey Epstein had told her I could tell her all she needed to know about investigative journalism. It was a subject that typically made people's eyes glaze over, but Morgan Fairchild seemed keenly interested. I dined with her many times in Los Angeles. Back in New York City, Jeffrey Epstein introduced me to a diverse set of his acquaintances. This is all 1987. This is going to blow you away. Hang in there. We had lunch with Leslie Orgel, Orgel, a Salk Institute theoretical chemist who, over lunch at the Italian Pavilion, said the human life might have been seeded on Earth by a higher intelligence in the universe, a theory that greatly interested Jeffrey Epstein. So somehow, Jeffrey Epstein knows people at the Salk Institute who are talking about panspermia, who are talking about the possibility there's no evolution on Earth. Life was seeded. Sort of like how Craig Venter suggested it. Craig Venter described that pretty much exactly in the 2006 book, What We Believe and Cannot Prove. This was from the Edge Institute. It was written in 2006, where Jeffrey Epstein was a donor. He even donated money, and of course, Craig Venter's in this book, and there's even one page with the most useless thing you could ever possibly write from Jeffrey Epstein. Let's go on. Vera Wang, a former Vogue editor. Vogue. I know Candace Owens worked there for a year, along with the daughter of Mark Weiner, who was super close with Jesse Jackson. Coincidence, I'm sure. Vera Wang, a former Vogue editor who had just opened a bridal dress store on Madison Avenue, New York City. Evangeline Carey, the wife of former Governor Hugh Carey. And it goes on and talks about a bunch of other names here. Eventually Paula Fisher, who I guess was one of his older girlfriends. The article, I love it because it sounds very realistic. If X, then Y, okay? Is everything in here true? I'm not 100% sure. I can't see the motive to lie, though. And he's not really suggesting anything horrible about Jeffrey Epstein. None of the crazy, salacious stuff. And it even suggests that, you know what, this whole concept of you being, Mr. Drug and King and gun trafficker, it just doesn't make any sense. And why would you? Because he knows other people connected with that. It just doesn't make any sense. So this is 1987, and this falls into these gap years of Jeffrey Epstein, 1981, getting kicked out of Bear Stearns, and then there's a few lawsuits in the middle. But what we know, or I should say, what I think we can lean on is being more solid evidence. And one thing I do like about the Whitney Webb books is that even she had to admit it, is that Jeffrey Epstein, but she's trying to dance around it, okay? I'm sure watching Whitney Webb dance is something that would permanently scar the eyeballs. But she's trying to dance around saying that Jeffrey Epstein's first big client was Les Wexner. And she's trying not to say the names of these other people because there is a reference in this Jeffrey Epstein the page that I have on Jeffrey Epstein, okay. And this is actually a quote from a Vanity Fair article that was written in 2003, I believe. So I know we're jumping around a little bit here. So I'm stepping away from this 2023 Spectator magazine article. I'm jumping back to a 2003 article that was in Vanity Fair, where they are. They talk about this Michael Hoffenberg, who Jeffrey Epstein became friends with. And Hoffenberg was a part of this, this Towers Ponzi scheme scandal. But the sentence I'm going to read in here is this. Michael Hoffenberg, remember, a name that wasn't even mentioned in the first book, America Under Compromise, probably because it was the desire of whoever wrote the book, who was steering Whitney Webb, to suggest that somehow Jeffrey Epstein got direct access to Les Wexner. So this name Hoffenberg didn't even show up in that book. I think as more people have researched it, they're like, well, Jeffrey Epstein didn't know Wexner until later. Hoffenberg might have actually been a mentor of Jeffrey Epstein before Les Wexner. But let's read from this 2003 Vanity Fair article, which, again, we don't know if anything here is true, but when you see things popping up in multiple places, sourced from in multiple ways, and also you have to use your intuition, right? If X, then Y. It's a powerful formula because you can actually determine if the evidence makes sense, right? Based upon what you can observe and measure, right? You see a guy standing on the front lawn of his house. There's a landscaping truck there. He's holding a leaf blower. He probably works as a landscaper for that service. He's probably not invading the house. It's probably not even the homeowner. You can kind of gather things. Look at the basic data. If X, then Y. You can use clues. And then if someone were to say, well, that guy holding the leaf blower there, he just happens to be involved with Anand Khashoggi and Iran Contra affair. You're like, well, I guess it's possible, but based upon what I'm seeing here, it would be more likely that he's also knows how to use a lawnmower. It just, why would you just throw Iran Contra in the middle of that? That doesn't make any sense. So the X and Y thing. But let's go to this 2003 Vanity Fair article. Here it says, Michael Hoffenberg, a close friend, says a close friend really liked Jeffrey. Jeffrey Epstein had a way of getting under your skin, and he was also under Michael Hoffenberg's skin. I apologize for saying this, but the more I read about Jeffrey Epstein, the more I think he has Asperger's. And you know why? Because my deceased adult son had Asperger's. So much of the behavior that I keep reading about Jeffrey Epstein, his ability to sell, his ability to push into people's lives, sometimes his awkwardness, okay, it aligns. I've seen this, and I've met other young men with, it's usually men with Asperger's, which is probably connected to either a minor injury from birth or possibly even of intramuscular injection vaccine associated injury. I've seen this behavior before. I fully understand. I'm not freaking out when I see this stuff. Some people don't know what that is, so they just assume that this means he eats babies or something crazy like that. I've seen this, and I know my adult son, stepson, he didn't eat babies. He had a hard time connecting with people since he was born. I get it. So anyways, let's read this article here. Let's read this paragraph here. So also appealing to Michael Hoffenberg, this person that was not mentioned at all in the very first Whitney Webb book, were Jeffrey Epstein's social connections, which at this time in 1987, again, these are 1987 connections, included oil mogul C.C. Wang, who is the father of the designer Vera Wang. Vera Wang, the famous clothes designer. She has her own, she's made countless dollars selling purses and so on. And Mohan Murjani, Murjani. And most people don't know that name, but he's an Indian-born fashion entrepreneur and chairman of the Murjani Group, a global brand development company best known for launching and building several designer lifestyle labels. Born in India and raised in Hong Kong, that's the worst combination. Both places I want to go. I love people from both. But as far as not having the interest at heart, I'm sorry. There's a lot of people born in India and Hong Kong who are looking out for interest outside of the United States. It doesn't make them bad people. It just means that their interest may not be aligned with mine. I get it. I actually respect it. At least it's above board. But anyways, he joined his family business in 1966 and played a major role in transforming it into a designer branding enterprise. Murjani is particularly known for creating the Gloria Vanderbilt designer jeans in the 1970s, the first major designer label denim for women, in particular with American heiress Gloria Vanderbilt, who, by the way, is the mother of Anderson Cooper of CNN. The debut of Gloria Vanderbilt by Murjani Jeans, featuring her signature and swan icon, became a commercial success. He's still alive today. He lives in Thailand. He's about 80 years old. No one knows how much he's worth. I suspect he's worth several times as much as Les Wexner. And that matters. You know why that matters? Because why would Jeffrey Epstein work with this man, who is worth many times more than Les Wexner, but then choose to go out of his way to become an account manager for Les Wexner? Why? If X, then why? We are told that Jeffrey Epstein is motivated by, above everything else, compromising people and getting money. So why does he go after the small fish in the pond? That doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. And also, if he's working with a purse designer in the mid 1980s, if he's then working with the person who created the Tommy Hilfiger clothing, Gloria Vanderbilt, if he's working with models and actresses already before Morgan Fairchild, before he ever even meets anyone related to Victoria's Secrets or Les Wexner, wouldn't it then make sense that if Jeffrey Epstein already knows all of these people involved in clothing, that he would be able to sell himself as a valuable investing asset to Les Wexner? Doesn't that just make all the sense? I mean, if he went to Les Wexner and said, I traffic planes, I work for the CIA, I smuggle drugs, I do this, I'm working with the Contra, Les Wexner's going to go, why are you here? I'm just the richest guy in Ohio. The richest guy in Iowa is richer than me. Why are you here? You're from New York City. I'm in Columbus. Beautiful place to live, but you don't go from living in New York City to living in Columbus and remain happy, because it just doesn't work like that. It doesn't make any sense. Evidence is no substitute for thinking. You are allowed, as an analyst, to think. You're supposed to think. You're not supposed to just look for the evidence that says so-and-so did this and then say so-and-so did this. Evidence is not proof of anything. You know what proves it is the analysis that's done with the evidence. It's the logic that's applied to the evidence that takes evidence and converts it into truth. So people feel as though they should be bullied around by what they see in the Whitney Webb books. This is one of the reasons why I can't stand these books. I'm going to pop back up on the screen there, okay? I can't stand these Nation Under Blackmail books. Where is it? And I said I would do a chat check, and I still haven't. Is because there's several hundred pages of just facts. You're basically bent over a barrel and just mauled with facts. Facts, facts, facts. Evidence, evidence, evidence. And the books, they don't give you any motive or any way to be able to come up with a simple timeline in your head. It's just evidence, 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 and it's all over the map, different timelines, and all you can think of is, well, I guess this guy really, and it's all also based upon a false underlying premise. And the underlying premise is that you can control the world through blackmail. Bad news, everyone. It's actually good news. People should be celebrating this. It's liberating. You can't control the world through blackmail. You can't control the world through blackmail. Can't control the world through kitty photos. Can't control the world through compromise. You can't. False underlying premise. I have to keep saying it throughout my video because that's one of the most important takeaways. And you know, you don't even need evidence. You don't need evidence. I don't need to write a book for anyone to be able to understand this. Just think. Think it through. Apply your logic skills. Think it through. It's a false underlying premise, which is used as the bedrock for these two books. Now, these two books contain lots of evidence of something. Actually, they just contain evidence. And with a bully, and they bully you into thinking that you should just accept the fact that Israel controls the world. Here's 1,000 pages of evidence and you have to assume that you control the world through compromise. And there's nothing you can do about it. Trump is bad. There you go. There's a summary of the book. I just wrote the dust cover for the book. That's all. That's really all you need to know for those books. They don't give you any useful information. They don't talk about the things which are greater priority. That's it. It's garbage. It doesn't mean that her capabilities are garbage, but these books are garbage, clearly, without doubt. And I think the work of everyone that is built on these books is also absolute worthless trash. They aren't, but the work is. So what we have here is that in the 1980s, this period of time where because there isn't enough solid evidence of exactly which investors that Jeffrey Epstein was working with between 1981 to 1980, early 1987, there is an assault of facts, of evidence being used, and Whitney Webb is one of the conduits of this, to suggest that somehow or another, this Jeffrey Epstein is going to yield all the clues about how the world is run through compromise and by Jews and Satanism. That's kind of how they're filling in the blanks, even though there is a plenty of evidence. There's other evidence which very easily aligns with people's thinking skills, which makes a whole lot more sense. It's so much more powerful. It just flows. It's an easy to tell story. It makes sense. If X and Y, it all just works out. It's like, oh, so he's in New York City. This is his certain behaviors. These are his capabilities. He's a little bit of a what do they call it? He's selling things that are he's overselling some things. He's selling people pipe dreams in some ways. He's a little bit of a con artist. Gloria Vanderbilt, by the way, and was it CC Wang, Vera Wang, even remained friends at his birthday party. They were in 2002, 2003 at his birthday party, and they all said the same thing. He dates around a lot. Isn't that interesting? It all lines up with a particular way of how do you say a set of character traits that I've seen before. The purse maker that is referenced here, Vera Wang. Her father was an oil guy, CC Wang. I'll bet you CC Wang even represents the place where Jeffrey Epstein invested $400,000 that was given to him by some guy down in Texas. It all makes sense. It just flows. It's so easy. But you know what we're not doing here? We're not talking about running around with Pakistani terrorists selling guns and drugs. And because he's working a lot with people who are in the fashion industry, doesn't it make a whole lot of sense that he eventually gets to know Leslie Wexner? Matter of fact, Leslie Wexner, an introduction to Leslie Wexner might have even been to the benefit of some of the people in the fashion industry to help them be able to sell some of their product. Now, the introduction of Jeffrey Epstein to the Ohio businessman Leslie Wexner is also something that they're throwing a lot of smoke at right now. Jeffrey Epstein, he just somehow wound up on a plane, flying coach, next to this other, AON insurance guy in Palm Beach. But the whole story doesn't make any sense because the insurance guy that Jeffrey Epstein used to get to know Leslie Wexner is very rich. And the people that Leslie Wexner already work with, including this Mohan Merjani, are even more rich than Les Wexner. So again, if you already know very rich people, why are you using them to get to another, relatively rich person? That doesn't make any sense. We have been led to believe that Jeffrey Epstein somehow was just becoming a millionaire and then through his own brilliance managed to directly target Les Wexner because Les Wexner is the richest, most powerful guy in Ohio. Doesn't make any sense. Does not make any sense. The whole narrative collapses. And it collapses when you step back from realizing that an assault with evidence is not really proof of anything. It needs to make sense. It needs to be logically cohesive, and it's not. And then at that point, after an introduction to Jeffrey Epstein, that's when or to Les Wexner, that's when Jeffrey Epstein starts to have even more money. He's able to purchase his Palm Beach home for $2.5 million in 1990. I don't think he paid cash for it. It's probably probably on loan. And now, because of however, getting to know some of the people out in the Salk Institute, for example, he's aware of some of these bigger opportunities for investing in technology. The fact that he was some panspermia idea is incredible. This is a 1991 article here? This was, so 1991, we have evidence that now he knows Les Wexner. 1991, we know that Jeffrey Epstein knows Les Wexner. He knows this Robert Allen Meister, who's with this AON insurance group that I want to review in a minute also. He gets to buy or gets to live in Les Wexner's home in New York City. And the rest of it it all kind of comes together. Of course, when it comes to renovating the home in New York City that's owned by Les Wexner, how does Jeffrey Epstein have so many connections to, architects and designers? Well, it makes sense. He already knows Vera Wang. He already knows this Indian billionaire clothing designer who's connected, who owns Tommy Hilfiger. And was married to Gloria Vanderbilt, I guess, the mother of Anderson Cooper. It makes sense. Of course he's able to have access to good designers for the house and then get it into the front page of the New York Times. All makes sense. It all just flows. And then at some point, he gets to know other people in the media. Again, it all makes sense. And you know what? None of it involves gun and weapon trafficking. Just involves knowing people in the fashion industry, people making garments, making belts and purses, Morgan Fairchild, a couple of Hollywood people. At some point, he probably gets to know some musical artists as well. Maybe people like Michael Jackson, for example. I'm sure other Democrats. That would make sense because if you look at where things go, if you look at the people that he's able to help out, including the Clintons, including the DNC, it makes sense. In fact, yesterday I was doing some reviews on the history of Michael Jackson, the history of the entertainment industry, and how it turns out that the first U.S. presidential candidate and president who seemed to benefit dramatically from having access to Hollywood stars, Hollywood movie, or I should say, to pop music, rock music, and other music stars was Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter won with the endorsements of a incredible range of artists, starting with the Allman Brothers, and eventually including Cher. Even years later, going on a tour with around Atlanta with Michael Jackson to encourage vaccinations in 1997. Thank you to Subi for helping me out with that one, if they're in the chat right now. Hopping around a little bit here, but the real the real point of this video is, how can these ridiculous, absurd, stupid claims be made? I shouldn't say how. We just discussed how. But how all of this junk is being thrown out there right now to create this narrative. Now, why would someone care? Why would someone want to put so much on Les Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein? Why is there so much push for this idea that somehow Jeffrey Epstein is so powerful through compromise and so involved in so many things? Well, it plays into an even bigger idea,
Jones got the call,
which was, thanks to Jonathan Cooey, I saw this video yesterday. Not that one. That's a terrible video. Let's go to YouTube. It's going to open up a video, probably another video. Let's see here. It was Dr. Drew. So yesterday, Dr. Drew had on a guest named Mel K, who I guess got her start.
And frankly, I think
she got her start with, as Jonathan Cooey tabulated for me, 50-something times on Roseanne Barr. Now she has a book out. She's promoting her book, and I guess she's the all-knowing researcher and analyst right now. Of course, they need to find women. It can't be, some old guy like myself, doing it. It's got to be something that's more appealing to the guys. They got nothing better to do. I don't know. So they're putting Mel K out there, and I don't know. I'm going to wager that she did not come to most of these conclusions herself. She probably could have. I don't mean to dismiss her capabilities, but it is reasonable to make an assessment of someone's accomplishments based upon their track record. All right? If today was my very first podcast, if I just out of nowhere started talking about all this stuff, you should be suspicious. But you can see it took me several years to go from not knowing anything to everything I just said. So my track record of going from zero to wherever I am right now is well documented and visible. I didn't just pop up with a book. Whitney Webb just popped up with a book. Almost no track record. It should have taken her years to get there. Not to mention Whitney Webb and this other Mel K are a few years younger than me, meaning that they didn't even have the life experiences and trauma and loss to build on to have on day one. If I started this 20 years ago, it would have taken me even longer to get to where I am right now. Matter of fact, it took me exactly that many years to get to where I am right now. So I don't mean to be dismissive of their capabilities or their intellect, but I am questioning their accomplishments so far, because there's no way to come out with a book like that, as garbage as it may be, on day one. You just can't. There should be a long, well-documented track record of suffering and learning and getting things wrong. And you just don't see it. So therefore, I think it's fairly safe to say that she's scripted. But she comes on to the Dr. Drew show, and within the very first minute, I think Dr. Drew, during his introduction, and then in her very first 30 seconds, will tell you something about why she's doing this and the point of her book, the Mel K book. And now you're going to understand why there's so much pressure to push these garbage agendas that somehow Jeffrey Epstein and sex compromise can connect all the dots and all of the missing U.S. history. So let's go, Dr. Drew.
Well, that was when they were buying up real estate around here, and they were unloading their.
He just talked to Peter Schweitzer.
I may not.
On our
once a week for 20 minutes, and we'd love to have you on. So we'll be in touch.
All right, excellent. I am. I feel like I've learned something, and I may not sleep as well tonight because of it. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Invisible Coup is the book. Check that out. I definitely am going to read The Invisible Coup.
It's really weird.
What's that?
We have a house on our corner here.
Oh, yeah.
That was bought by Chinese nationals 5-10 years ago. How long has it been?
15.
Chinese nationals. I love how they did that. By the way, we have an Indian national right now who's running the NIH and the CDC in the United States government. And for some reason, that's totally okay. Interesting.
Years ago, at least.
I don't think it was that long, but they paid a lot of money for it, and nobody lived in it. And they tried to.
They were here one day. I went down and introduced myself, and they looked at me like I was on fire.
It was crazy.
Sorry about this.
And I'm trying to figure out what that's all about. But
that was when they were buying up real estate around here, and they were unloading their capital.
I'd like to fast forward it just a few seconds, but
to invest in the stock. We have a lot. Have to run the heater.
One citizen at a
Here we go.
Mel, welcome back.
Oh, thank you for having me. I wish that I could say that it's going to be a better segment than the last one, but but I've been working on how
More
exactly we got here.
Yeah.
No, not really. I mean, my thing is, I have a book coming out called Infiltration Instead of Invasion, America Betrayed, 1944 to 1954. And I think we have to figure out how we got here, because the Jeffrey Epstein situation is something that's been playing out for decades. And I think that the American people have been largely misled about history post World War II, which is very much, I think, the battle that is going on supranationally, is because systems were put in place in the aftermath of World War II that we were not privy to, I don't believe, as American citizens, that have undermined and subverted the will of the people. And if it's time for the American people, like I say in Americans Anonymous, which is like a 12-step program for American citizens, is that we have to be honest that our history is not exactly what we've been told. Our country was, I believe, subverted and captured by a supranational architecture that was built before our eyes in the late 40s, early 50s. And we are still fighting the battle against this, I believe, capture of not just our nation, but the world that Jeffrey Epstein worked for.
So there you go. So Jeffrey Epstein is going to be used as a vehicle to show you how the world was subverted. The world was subverted with pictures of children. The world was subverted with a control structure, super hyper national, mega national infrastructure, and nothing is what you think. And it's run, just say it, Jews that eat babies or something like that. And that's what you need to know. And this is why that they are taking everything they can about Jeffrey Epstein and expanding it. They're filling in all the blanks. If there's a day where there's something not known about Jeffrey Epstein, they're going to suggest it's Adnan Khashoggi, Iran Contra, missing nukes, missing girls, sex trafficking, gun trafficking, drug trafficking, this, that, NATO this, blah, blah, blah. Religious infiltration, church infiltration. They're going to take one guy that, was probably had Asperger-like symptoms and was willing to scam a few people out of money, who knew people that made purses and handbags in New York City, who eventually decided to find a spatula store guy in Ohio, Les Wexner, to control the world. They're just going to keep expanding it out. Now, another possibility that you will find far more fruitful, and they love to say Chinese nationals running it all, even though most of them can't even speak English. Kind of hard to be subverted by someone that can't speak your own language. But other countries can. Just throwing that one out there. So let's throw out an alternative hypothesis, okay? Let's just throw this one out there. Because clearly Jeffrey Epstein at one point suggested that he had knowledge of panspermia by knowing these chemists and these biologists at the Salk Institute all the way back in the 1980s. Let's throw out another alternative hypothesis. There were incredible insights made about the nature of bacteria, about bacteriophages, and about vaccines and about the immune system during the time of World War II, in part because of advances that were made in investments that were being made in the Manhattan Project, but also because of medical experimentation that was being done in World War II Germany, which explained a wide range of harmful phenomenon which happened to children and adults in the United States for several decades beforehand. This led to, at the same time, concurrently, there was an arms race between the United States, Soviet Union, and a few other superpowers, which encouraged investment of things such as rocketry and basic space exploration, which, combined with what we said earlier, led to massive advances in the knowledge of biology, the discovery of something of a model called DNA, which was being suggested as the answer to everything, even though it's not. And then, at some point in the early 1960s, winding up with a world conference where the statement was made that it's possible, probably even man's destiny, human's destiny, to reorganize society to attain a greater goal of taking over control of the evolution of the human species for the greater good. And although this pursuit of controlling the evolution of the human species through advancing knowledge of genetics isn't the reason for everything. A vast majority of world events has a little to a lot to do with this. Now, there's still competition between religions. There's still nation-state battles. There's still, battles over energy. There's a lot of things still happening. But this pursuit of and this advancement of this science and what this is being sold as a potential, not only a nasty bioweapon, but maybe even the ability for people to live substantially longer or to attain some higher goal, has resulted in so many things happening over the last 40, 50, 60 years. And I think at some point it's going to become evident. Now, I wish that this stuff was more public for decades ago, but it hasn't been maybe it was for the right reason, maybe it was the wrong reason, I don't know. But maybe what has happened over the last, since World War II, as she said, 1945, we're now talking about, 80 years, is that this pursuit has become bigger. It has gotten more and more money. The data centers have become larger. The implications of it are either becoming bigger or it's being revealed to will never be able to deliver what they say. I'm not really sure which one it is. And this involves scientists that, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein, gosh darn, I hate it when it does that. Sorry for the cursing. Jeffrey Epstein has known about and has worked with. Jeffrey Epstein said that he became a board member at the Rockefeller Institute, and by the way, he did in the 1990s. So he would have been tuned into all of this. Now, doesn't it make a whole lot more sense to think that there is something happening at that level globally behind the scenes that's impacting some things a little or many things or some things a lot that we can then talk about to understand why so many, like HIV, what was that HIV outbreak all really about? What was really happening with the Gulf War syndrome? Why did the United States sign over the Panama Canal the way it did in 1981? Yeah, that had a Khashoggi connection, and Jimmy Carter as well. The pursuit of cancers. You want to get into all of these things. Doesn't it make a whole lot more sense for that to be there? But instead of people having an opportunity to get a better insights on this right now, it's all going to be clouded with a story that's a bunch of greedy Jews or Masons or whatever. Pick your conspiracy group that you don't like here. You choose to hate people based upon religion or skin color or whatever, or nationality, and just go at it, create doubt. I mean, they've already done it. They've already said Chinese national how many times? Chinese national buying the house. Chinese national won't mow their lawn. The Chinese national doesn't pay their bill. The Chinese national. And then, so whether or not, they've already done it. They're already encouraging people. And then by the Epstein thing, it's going to come down to, Tucker Carlson saying things like, well, I'm not saying it's the Jews, but let's just be honest. Can't really answer that question, blah, 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 blah. Tucker Carlson would say, and then he would throw his head back and jaws open up with his stupid, ridiculous, overcompensating laugh. Mel K just spills it out. And and what bothers me about it doesn't bother me. It's exactly the same thing that I want to write a book about. Except I'm going to put forward the point that this isn't because some people like to eat babies and compromise photos work. Sorry, that's not how the world's being run. The world is being run by people who are scared. The world is being run by people who are don't have confidence. The world is being run by people who have questionable faith. The world is being run by people who don't want to admit that their ideas of the potential of sciences are wrong. The world is being run by liars. The world is being run by traitors not being properly punished. That's what's happening. And instead of getting insights on that stuff, it's going to be filled with a baloney story. So they're going to take this Jeffrey Epstein story and they're going to put as much air into it as possible. They're going to try to explain the last 80 years of history. The entire history where, look, some of the decisions that Joshua Lederberg made are so horrifying that it would not be unreasonable for me to assert deaths in my own family happened as a consequence of big picture planning that involved Joshua Lederberg. I should be furious at him, okay? But I'm empathetic. I can understand. But understanding that, it brings me some peace and confidence because at least I can understand the rationale about it. And I know that it was a real pursuit that was and still is still happening and is still driving things. I think maybe so. This is the Jeffrey Epstein story, and this is why you go back to the Whitney Webb books, and it's so awesome how it just took a smaller idea where Jeffrey Epstein was one person, and it's just blowing more and more air into it. They're going to make Jeffrey Epstein the world, and nobody's pushing back. I can't see anybody pushing back. Oh, I can see there's one guy on Twitter. Michael, I can't think of the guy's name right now. I like his takes on it. He probably doesn't know me from a hole in the wall. I don't know. But let's see here. I think feeling like now's a good time just to check in and say hi. I know that was a weird show. The reason why I wanted it to go to this Mel K part here, reload player. The reason why I wanted to get to this Mel K part here is because it's the summary of why I'm feeling that it's appropriate to learn as much about some of these Jeffrey Epstein parts, because why do they keep talking about it? Why do they keep talking about it? I need to know the why. I need to have the story. I need to throw something out there. I can't just say it's not true. All right? But if I can understand what they're trying to say and not only have an alternative, but even be able to describe why they're using the Epstein-Ellis mythology, well, now that's very powerful, I think. Mike Tracy, thank you, Shimmer. That's exactly the name I was going for. I don't know if I trust everything Mike Tracy. I don't know. But I like the fact that he keeps highlighting it's so stupid how much they keep blowing air into this Epstein story. And I don't know when it ends. I don't know how it ends. I've never seen anything like this before. None of us ever have. I mean, does it just go away after something else interesting happens? Based upon the show of Mel K, and I can now see that they are going to use Jeffrey Epstein and all of the things which are being insinuated to be able to provide a structure to explain the last 80 years of history. That's really terrifying. That bothers me. Vilma says, Michael Tracy, he's stolen research done by Jessica of House and Habit. I wouldn't be surprised, Vilma. I wouldn't be surprised if he's done that. I'm not saying he did or didn't. I'm just repeating what you said. I'm only commenting on the fact that he's one of the few people that has any level of pushback on the insanity around Jeffrey Epstein. That's all. And I've retweeted him quite a few times. Not everything, but quite a few times. It's like living inside a Netflix thriller. Same scriptwriters. Absolutely. Hello, Subi. I gave you a little shout out earlier, Subi. Thank you. Hello, Christy. Good to have you here. Hello, Depth. Don't answer now, but just curious what y'all think about the companies mentioned. I don't know what companies you mentioned. I'm going to go back a little bit. Mark, what do you think about this being out there? She's making connections to DNA therapeutic companies being invested. I'm opening it on a different computer over here so the audience won't see it. Oh, you know what? So Depth is referring to a Kim Iverson video about baby farming and babies and Zero Ranch, and that sounds just You know, most scientists are still humans. There's probably a few scientists that are more morally flexible than others, but most scientists aren't humans. I don't think it's possible that you could find 100 scientists that are totally okay with a great big farm of babies being killed or tested on. I just don't think that's possible. But Depth, I am glad that you mentioned that that you did bring that up, because, and I haven't done a video on this. I might do a video short because I want to highlight this. One of the videos that I had made 2 or 3 years ago, it was instantly banned on YouTube, was a video, and I've talked about this before. This will probably be old material for you, maybe, definitely for some people here, is the way the FBI, or I think it's the FBI, tracks missing children. Is that when a report is made, they call that I think the word they use is a claim or an incident. So, child doesn't come home from school, they file the claim, they file the report. They go missing at school. They someone else notices some kids. I don't know. When a claim is made, a case is opened, and when a child is located, and 99.999% of the time, children are located alive. Usually they went to go play at someone else's house without their parents' permission. A lot of times it's a custody case, one angry parent, they're afraid they're not going to get to visit the kid for the weekend, stuff like that. Describes 99.999% of the cases. When a case is, when they solve a case, they close the case. If the child isn't located, the case remains open. If they find a child deceased, maybe they died in an accident, no one found them, or maybe they were murdered, they still close the case. The case is closed, noted that the child died. So an open case is a child that is not located. Now, some of those cases are 30 years old, meaning these are adults right now. They're not children anymore. They're not just sitting somewhere as a child waiting to grow up. They're still, they're adults right now if they're still alive. But what people have done, and many people in this online, like Tori says, whoever that person is, she's done this before. She will make claims that every year 800,000 children in America go missing. And the takeaway from that, remember, sort of like telling only a little bit of the information, is that 800,000 a year are kidnapped and killed. And people repeat this number. And then, of course, they round up and they'll say, every year, almost 1 million children go missing. Well, what they don't tell you is that every year, if there's 1 million cases filed, 999,000 of them are closed with the child found. So this is being misrepresented right now. The total number of cases which are still open all time over 30 or 40 years is about 40,000, about 1,000 a year. And some of those kids most of them are still alive. They were probably given new identities for whatever reason. Again, custody comes into play a lot. Some of them were murdered and never found. Now, there have been children which were murdered, and they closed the case because they found the deceased child. That's in the thousands over the decades, okay? But the total number of children that have actually been missing, that were never found, they're still unrecorded for all time. This means case is still open. It's floating around 30 to 40,000. I bring this up because that means that there is a database of 30 to 40,000, give or take, reports that have never been closed of children who may still be alive. They would be adults right now. And there's probably DNA evidence associated with many of those. So allow me this. How hard would it be to go through those records, find a dozen or a few hundred, then use Ancestry.com to be sure that they're not alive, and plant DNA evidence at Epstein's ranch, and create the insinuation that now you have proof that Epstein was eating babies all along? I'm almost certain that is going to happen. That's exactly going to happen. They're going to use the missing children databases and a little bit of DNA evidence. They're going to make sure that the child isn't out there somewhere as an adult. And they're going to plant DNA evidence to suggest that Epstein kidnapped children and ate them. And the elite did as well. And then this is going to describe how, the great expose of the never before heard of, but trained by Roseanne Barr Melkay, how she is right that the last, all of U.S. history since World War II, it's about Jews eating babies, the Illuminati eating babies, the Rothschild and the Rockefellers eating their babies and compromising people. I can already tell you how they're going to get the evidence. So instead of anyone, taking a break and having Joshua Lederberg Day, and realizing, wow, it's amazing that we're having all of these soft disclosures coming out right now. They want the entire community of people. They want every single person to discredit themselves by actually believing the world is run by cannibals and pedophiles. It bothers me a lot. It's not personal, but this is how they are going to be discrediting the idea of the United States of America. This is now who's paying them and why they're doing this. I don't know. I can't talk about this subject for that much because I find it to be a drag on my soul. I find it to be depressing. It's sad that instead of wanting to get involved in real history, real science, the real unknowns that the Human Genome Project bumped into, people are going to all be discredited and driven to insanity with these crazy ideas. And it's getting fueled by the exact machine that we've identified. I'm not surprised at all. Let's see, go back down a little bit here. Hello, Subi. My boyfriend works with NASA. While there, some occultists, lots to some events and decided never to bring my kid, and many atheists. I know my boyfriend is very ignorant to all that. There's a growing number of, let's just say, humanists in these within the scientific community. A growing number of people who are not, they're definitely not, they definitely don't subscribe to monotheism. And yeah, I think that's fair. Is that fair? Oh, no, I would understand. I'm not surprised. Let's put it that way. I'm not surprised that there's an increasing number within NASA, probably within biotech overall. I would definitely see an increased number. Shimmer says, I watched Rogan with Dr. Malone recently. I didn't know Malone was on there again, Shimmer. Rogan started talk about the salacious stuff about Jeffrey Epstein. Malone just said, yep, and nothing else. Yeah, that makes sense. I could see that. Nothing to add, but no denying. Malone just allowed people like Rogan to carry on the salacious water. Very well said, Shimmer. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing that, Shimmer. I appreciate that. It's India funded, and most people in India are just schleps like the rest of us. But India is a big part of the future power center of the world. There, I said it. The idea that India is going to be the future economic hub of the world started several decades ago. India is probably going to be the future. I see India as the future home of the United Nations. Most likely. I think one thing that India might have done is that while there were plans for population controls enforced throughout the world starting probably 1970s, including one-child policy, including vaccine experimentation in Africa, I think that India very sneakily didn't do it, knowing that it would result someday with them having an economic advantage. Yeah, I know that's conspiratorial, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them. The whole pursuit of a family size reduction and one child policy was one of the worst ideas ever. And that's probably a very good example of how, while this pursuit of, controlling the human genome, of controlling the evolution of the human species, of advancing those sciences, it doesn't control everything. But if you are in a emerging power like India wasn't always, India used to be the power, okay? If you know that something like that is happening, you would be stupid not to factor that into your geopolitical strategy. Why would you overlook the fact that you can take advantage of a population of people that think that overpopulation is going to destroy Earth and other planets? You should nurture them in those ideas. If you are thinking multi-generationally, which I imagine is easier in a nation like India that's been around for thousands of years, okay? And if you know that there are leading intellectuals in England, the United States, Canada, and China that are willing to have their families stop having babies, then there is more to gain by sending them money to support those intellectual ideas and those policies in those countries than you could ever do by building a Navy and an Air Force and collecting rockets and blowing up those countries. That's exactly what you would do. It's the smart move. And I think it's reasonable that India participated in that. Probably a lot of other people from the old, the League of Nations, and why not? I believe the United States was sold out like that in part. Fascinating with Jeffrey Epstein. If you look at some of these Jeffrey Epstein names, these names change everything. Think of these names. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't running around with Adnan Khashoggi selling guns and drugs for Iran-Contra, and anyone who's saying that is working against the interest of the United States of America. That's the truth. This is who Jeffrey Epstein was working with in the 1980s, between 1981 and 1987. Let me find the sentence again, because I think this one line just changes everything. Here we are, okay? 1980s. Epstein was socially connected with oil mogul C.C. Wang. I think Wang Computers. Remember the Wang Computers building near in Massachusetts? Who is the father of designer Vera Wang. Vera Wang designers, purses, and Mohan Murgiani, whose net worth has never been shared. He's the father of Tommy Hilfiger of the designer clothes. He is probably fantastically more wealthy than Leslie Wexner. So you have one of the wealthiest Indians in the world here. This is Jeffrey Epstein's money. And if you notice, what does Whitney Webb talk about? Whitney Webb goes straight to BCCI, which is a Pakistani-funded bank. She goes in the other direction. She doesn't want to say it. Her job, just like Whitney Webb's job, just like Robert Malone's job, just like InfoWars' job, just like Mel K's job, just like Dr. Whatever it is, Peters, whatever his job, is to never say India. They just don't exist. Talk about the Russians, talk about the Ukrainians, talk about the Jews and the Israelis, talk about the whatever. India doesn't exist. Don't put them on a map. Don't talk about them. Completely overlook the fact that Indian nationals right now run all of the health institutes in the United States of America after a time where apparently I thought America was destroyed by COVID-19, where all the evidence about the existence of the COVID-19 virus came out of India, all claiming it to be a lab leak in China. I'm not mad at India for this. It's a smart move. I'm actually kind of jealous that they have some people with balls that are able to do this. I'm upset at the Americans that either don't realize it or took money to sell America out. That's the embarrassing part, and it's still happening. What on earth is Jayanta Bhattacharya now running the FDA, the CDC and the NIH? You're telling me that amongst 300 something native-born Americans. You couldn't find one native-born American of any race you want to run the CDC and the NIH? Are you serious? You couldn't find one native-born American of any race or any mix that might have the interests of Americans' national sovereignty and health at heart? Really? They couldn't do that? Keep on Bhattacharya as an economic advisor or something if you want. They couldn't find one. They instantly gave the CDC role to an Indian national, which they won't talk about in this show, while saying that America's problem are Chinese nationals who are screwing people over with house sales or something like that. Trust me, if there were Chinese nationals running the CDC and the NIH, I would be equally upset. Maybe even more upset. Because especially if they can't speak English. So yeah, we are under assault. We're not under assault by India. I'm not afraid of other countries. But like George Washington, okay, the biggest threat were the traitors. The biggest threat were the people who worked for the other side and didn't say it. You line them up and you shoot them in the woods. And just like that, they won the Civil War. The United States won its freedom. Ever since the United States has stopped doing that, things have been getting worse. Hello, Peter. They can use the measurements to... Yeah, I don't know. They don't even need to use that much evidence. All they need to do is plant a little bit of DNA using the missing children database. The point is that they have the data that they need to do it. They're seeding the story. Thank you to, I think it was Depth, or I forget who shared it. Kim Iverson show about the baby farms with Epstein. You know where this is going. You know that's the narrative they're going to tell, and it feeds right into the bigger narrative that Mel K and other people are selling right now. The narrative is the last 80 years is nothing but pedophiles and cannibals and satanic sacrifice. There's a big agenda, subverting everything. No one knows about it. It hasn't been documented. But, of course, it is going to be documented. It's going to come out saying Epstein was the I don't know, showed it all or something like that. It's all going to be about Epstein. Of course, it can't all be about Epstein because Epstein wasn't even born until 1953. But they'll say a relative of Epstein. Epstein was mentored by somebody. They'll connect it in somehow, and it's too bad. It's too bad that that's being done. It should be expected though. It also means, but let's look on the bright side. Okay, the bright side is this means that in the beginning, and it would have to be years to write multiple volumes. Okay, of revisiting a real U.S. history. Based upon scientific endeavors, good or misguided, is exactly what is being countered by what they're working on. There must be a thirst. There must be an appetite, a hunger for understanding what the heck has happened over the last 60, 80 years. Now, most people don't want history, especially the younger population, but there must be. They're solving somebody's curiosity with this nonsense. So this would mean that we are on the right track. We are providing, we are where we need to be because alternatives are already rapidly, and I mean like overnight, they are working overnight to try to write books to fill it in. We should expect there to be multiple more books coming out about this. And how could she possibly be writing a book if she's working on her hair all day and doing podcasts? Not possible. Tory doesn't provide backup for her claims. Well, it's easy for Tory to say 1 million kids go missing a year. It's like, well, yeah, it's technically true. But 1 million kids are also kind of found a year. By the way, the number of kids that go missing and are not found every year should be as close to zero as possible. But What is important is to understand. Look, I know of adult women who have said that people tried to lure them into vans when they were kids. So kidnappings are real. It does happen. This is a real thing. Going after children does happen. These things do happen. But it is important to understand all the dimensions of these numbers. What happens in far greater numbers, as opposed to kidnapping children just for a sexual reason, is it's custody cases. A lot of children go missing, sometimes, for addictive reasons. So while it's good to have national attention to the safety of children, it always must include, I believe, some information, some context about the nature of what those threats are. Instead of just saying children go missing, baby field. If that's all people hear about, then they're going to think of it as the one-dimensional problems. Let's see here. One world government approaching for a multitude of reasons. Yeah, is it? It's the one world government was part of the vision of a lot of these futurists. These people that believed in getting involved in this evolutionary control, evolutionary research. Yeah, it's not about, Depth said it wasn't about eating babies. It was towards the human genome research. Well, I apologize. I misheard that. As soon as I saw the article, I'll actually pop it up on the screen over here. This is the one that Depth is talking about. This is Kim Iverson. Baby farming in mad science. I'm traumatized by watching bad horror movies when I was younger. So they actually there was actually a horror movie called People Farm, where they actually killed people and then planted them in the ground so that zombies could eat them after they rotted. Sorry. Hollywood has done awful things to my head. I wish I could unsee that movie, but I can't. Anyways, the moment I see that, I just assume that that's what they were talking about. So I had my interpretation of it wrong. It's actually about using babies for experimentation. That already does happen, though, in some ways, using cells, using using, I don't know what the right word is to use, but either from live births or abortions, there's already an abundance of material that's already available, that's used and collected. Circumcision, it's an awful subject. It's a terrible, terrible, dark subject. But yeah, really, it's going to be done in a ranch in the middle of nowhere, no coolers or anything. I mean, come on. If she's talking about medical experimentation, we know it already happens. I don't need to know anything about Jeffrey Epstein to know it already happens. So it's just muddying the waters. It's a good lead-in, though. Peter says it's all DARPA mind virus experiments. She doesn't partake in anything like a baby. I get it. Reginald can't even edit McKernan's head. Hello, Depth. We are lab rats. That's been, yeah. Every single one of us is a game of Go. Every single life is a game of chess. They've been looking at that for a while. That was understood. That was definitely understood for many decades right now. That's why I say Lebensborn was too big to fail, so they preserved and pampered all the fathers. Didn't India sue Bill Gates over his vaccines harming their babies? I think I've heard that. I don't know what the takeaway from that was, V, but I did hear that. Why did Wexner agree to be a scapegoat? I don't know. If Wexner was into garments, if he's into clothing, maybe he saw the opportunity to work with Jeffrey Epstein, who probably claimed to know Vera Wang and other designers, as a way to be able to improve his brand and grow his business. That's a reasonable thing. And I get the impression that Les Wexner is probably maybe a little gullible. He's probably someone that could have been manipulated, and why he was targeted so hard, I'm not really sure. Some of it could be because, again, of his of the fact that he's into clothing. There might have been some interest there because of the nature of modeling, and if Jeffrey Epstein already knew models because he already knows Vera Wang in the 1980s, then I could see how maybe he could play a role with, signing various models on for different talent agencies and stuff like that. But again, that's a far, far, far cry to suggest that he's then connecting that in with the Iran-Contra affair or something crazy like that. That just doesn't make any sense at all. If X, then Y. It's a nonsensical jump. On the Rogan recent podcast with Malone, they talk about how they're a 1-2 person work crew, podcast setup, Substack writing. Yeah, and it wouldn't even be enough to have the two of them. They need a team. They need several people to write those. It would take days to write a blog post like that. To write it, to source it, to archive it. If anyone has ever worked with Substack, you can get lost for hours on a photo that doesn't orient right, because they'll give you the option of this is what it looks like on the web and this is what it looks like on your phone, and you may want to upload the photo different ways with different hyperlinks, and when you get into all of that stuff, it just burns hours. And now we're talking just the time to write it, okay, to format it, not to mention have the subject matter expertise to do it. So I understand that he's got a team, and that's part of the brand, I guess. You're not supposed to see the team because the brand is Robert Malone. You're supposed to believe in the brand, and this happens a lot. People turn their identities into brands. There are very wealthy CEOs. I should know more names right now, but they're almost like a brand themselves. So they'll hire people to help with their communications. They'll hire people to help pick out their clothing. They'll hire someone to manage their house, manage the dogs, make sure the kids get to school, all that other stuff. So, and you wonder, how do they do it? How do they always have perfect teeth, and they're eating all the right foods, and they hire nutritionists. So there's a team of people managing the person because the person is the brand. So that's why when a corporation hires a very well-known person to fill a role, they're actually hiring a small company. So they'll give that CEO, I don't know, $20 million a year, whatever the number is, right? That CEO already knows that they have to spend, I don't know, $3 million a year, some number like that, on their staff that supports them and their life and their brand. So most individuals just don't work like that. I don't work like that, of course, but I'm blessed because of the role that I have here, that I worked in enough large companies that I could feel the pressure of working in a big corporation, and I can have empathy and understanding for the people who work at those very high levels. I understand the business flow. I understand the business, I think. I understand, I can kind of see some of the things that happen behind the background. I understand the way the compensations are the way they are, at least as far as that stuff goes. the India told China to run a chemical attack. Did they, Shimmer? I didn't hear that one. Shimmer shared in 2019, India, United Nations told China to run a chemical attack exercise in their country. Very interesting relationship, huh, between China and India. They ally on some things. They're obviously terrible enemies on others. Thank goodness the Himalayas are between them. The Wexner Foundation exerts spooky regime change influence over Israel leadership. There are so many foundations and trusts associated with Leslie Wexner. I am 100% certain that if you dig around enough, you're going to find some of them posting crazy photos. They are trying to make this Wexner guy out to be the devil. He's like almost 90 years old, isn't he? He wakes up every morning and he's happy to pee. Really, it's horrible. The projections that they're making on this guy. Hello, Entropy. Good to have you here. Still haven't done that follow-up, by the way. Wonder what Jeffrey Epstein's family tree looks like. He knew a bunch of people. You know, he kind of grew up blue-collar, lower blue-collar in Brooklyn. I don't think there's a lot there. I think it would have been found out by now. I think that would have been dug up by now. There's a lot of Epstein is it's not a super unique name. It's not impossible to do a full family tree on it either, but I just don't think there's anything there. I just think it would have come out somewhere else already. Yeah. You know, there was a year where I think it was when Curran, our son, I think he was 22. He died when he was 27. No, he was 21 or 22. He was the top salesperson for 6 months in all the Best Buys in Metro West Massachusetts. And he didn't even have a tech degree. He just knew how to sell. He could, he could just sell. He just, there was something about the way he approached relationships, and his native ability to understand social cues wasn't there. So you had to study people in a different way. He wasn't even aware that he was doing it. And I know another person connected with the Living in Recovery Network who is kind of the same way. So when I see some of these slightly socially awkward movements from Jeffrey Epstein, I hear him talk, and I keep hearing that he sells people stuff. It resonates. This is actually a real profile. Look up Asperger's. Look up successful traits. You'll notice that it's one of those characteristics where, it actually plays into, especially men being successful salespeople. So I can kind of see this profile building right now, that I can understand some of these characteristics of Epstein. And for whatever reason, he was really good at it, I guess. I don't know. Got to know the right people. He was, I think he was used in a way that he didn't even really understand. It was very, especially if you know models and you want to sell this idea of intrigue. I mean, remember, we went through that whole area in the 1990s of Monica Lewinsky. America was started to believe that whatever happened or didn't happen with Monica Lewinsky was worth shutting everything down and talking about. So America was starting to focus on that during that time. Not that it hasn't focused, I thought about it before, but so the way that this guy was being used or was going to be used evolved. I assert that the nature of September 11th, 2001 and the months or years afterwards created a need to have a very different type of machine. So I think the type of value that he offered changed, grew, and was augmented over time based upon other world events. And 2006 was kind of the big year where, suddenly accusations are made. They might have been real. I suspect that they were slightly staged because at that point they knew that that's why Epstein gets into those books such as this, right? What we believe but cannot count. All you need is Jeffrey Epstein to make a small donation. He gets on the edge innovations. He puts his name in the book. The underage prostitution solicitation charge comes up, and now everybody in this book is linked with child molester, just like that. That's the Epstein operation at play there, and the way that this it just kind of morphed and grew over time to now the point where they're just throwing the kitchen sink at it. I mean, heck, this Mel K story, I shouldn't say it's her story, but this idea that we're going to learn the last 80 years of the United States and the world was about some secret private networks subverting everything. This is how far they're going to take this idea. At no point are they ever going to be talking about the Human Genome Project. Okay, it's an hour and 56. That means my vocal cords are tensing up here. I see a couple more messages. I really should be reading them all. I will do that, Entropy. I'm sorry. Transmao, honey traps have been a thing forever. Yeah, they have been, but you have to know you can subvert somebody. I mean, you can ruin a marriage. I guess you can ruin a marriage, maybe. But if someone has a relationship that can be, I guess you could screw things up a little bit, but the thought that you can just endlessly control people, because there are a lot of people. Let's put it this way: the premise of America under compromise that you can subvert anybody. Some people can be subverted. Some people, if you know they have a weakness for certain drugs, you can kind of pull their strings a little bit. But that's some people. Some people can be subverted. Some people can be controlled. Some people. Can the world be subverted, though? Well, now you also have to, I mean, it's ludicrous. It also means that, it's just a ludicrous idea. And every day that people continue to promote it, is I know. It's too bad. It needs to be fought. Thank you, Depp. Thank you, everyone. There's always huge money bribes. Hey, you know what? Money talks. Money talks, but does money keep people silent also? Someone says, hey, I need money. I'll do this and that, the other thing for $100 million. You give them $100 million, they blow it. Then what? Well, now there's a money trail that they were paid to do something, and they're still willing to talk. So one assessment that needs to be made before you pay somebody off is it going to make a difference? If you give someone a bunch of money to do something and then they're still going to talk after a few years, well, why ever do it in the first place? So someone needs to exhibit behavior that they are going to, take the money, I guess. Weaponized piles of money. All right, I wish I could do a whole lot more. I'm sorry, my vocal cords are tensing up a little bit here. It's oh my goodness, it's 3:20 already. Some light, beautiful snow here. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, wonderful weekend. Look out for it's going to keep on motoring here. We have some other good news. I was so happy I opened my P.O. box today. I saw a bunch of things in it. I haven't checked it in like 8 days or so. So I'm going to work on that now. And other stuff in this office. You can see things are moving around. Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care. God bless. Stay positive. Episode 1470 something or other. Today was February 20th, 2026. I love you much. Stay positive. Don't spend too much time in the muck. Really, read something happy. Read about happy history, happy past, happy family, great leaders. Don't spend all your time in the Jeffrey Epstein lying muck. You will become it. That's the best thing. My little joke of the day is an hour of Liederberg a day keeps the sadness away. So, oh my goodness. All right, guys. Thank you. Take care, and God bless.